I'm Will Aubrey. It's time for another edition of the Improbability Engine. My buddy Joe Darnell joins me, and Joe, as always, we start with our moment of what?
Yeah, and quite frankly, there have been a few. This has been a pretty busy time of the year for some cringeworthy and questionable things. Mine comes from the great state of North Carolina. Of course, we know that North Carolina had some political wranglings that ran afoul of some other folks, and it caused the NCAA to pull all of their NCAA appearances in the state of North Carolina, moving them instead to South Carolina. And in response, the state of North Carolina has made some concessions to their laws to try to fix that rift. But not too many, I don't guess, because according to Andrea Adelson of ESPN, North Carolina says that they would require NC State, to exit the ACC if their state was boycotted by the ACC again. I read that and I was like, wait, what? They would force their state schools currently in the Atlantic Coast Conference to leave the Atlantic Coast Conference if the Atlantic Coast Conference were to boycott the state of North Carolina again. Now, I haven't read the legislation. I don't know if that means ever again or for any reason, but I read that and I was like, what?
Yeah, that's just crazy. There's crazy, and then there's crazy, and that's crazy.
It was one that really got. I still can't get my head around it. That's just nuts.
All right.
What's yours?
Whitney Creech. You probably have never heard of her.
I have not.
She's the all-time leading scorer in the history of high school basketball in the state of Kentucky. She played at Jenkins High School. She's now at Western Kentucky University. But get this, Jenkins High School, in her career, how many points would you say she scored in her career? I mean, 1,000's pretty good. How many?
2,000's great. I'll go 3,000. That's
5,500.
How many points did she score, Will? All the points, Joe. She scored all the points.
As a junior, she averaged 42 points. As a senior, she averaged 51 points. She had one game where she scored 71 and her team won in overtime.
You know, that's just crazy. You would think somebody might want to guard her. That's a lot of points. That's a lot of points in an NBA career. That's a lot of points.
That's a lot of points.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Will has been busy.
You think I could beat her?
You're talking
basketball?
3 points only?
No, I don't think I have a chance. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I don't think I would have a chance. Now, maybe when she was 12.
Maybe when she gets to be the age you are, yes.
If I could go back in time.
There you go. So we work out a time travel thing. There's a point on the timeline where I think you might be able to beat her. She might have been 6, and you might have been like 22 or 23.
Okay. Moving right along, it's an exciting time for Murray State University basketball, as all the rumors are that the Missouri Valley Conference is targeting Murray State as a replacement for Wichita State. And most Racer fans that I have talked to are excited about it and want Murray State to go to the Missouri Valley Conference.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not sure as to what the outcome will be. I think that's fairly obvious. I don't know anything more than what a lot of the media people talking have said. The biggest thing for me in this one is that whether Murray State goes to the Missouri Valley Conference or not, I like the chatter. I like the fact that people are talking about it. Frankly, because I'm of the mindset that in college basketball, you're either growing your brand or your brand is dying.
That's true.
It's the only two options there are. If you're not in the media, being talked about, a topic of conversation in regions that you recruit or amongst fans, then you're just not, you don't exist. And quite frankly, this is a scary time for college basketball. Savannah State's dropping down to D2. That just came out last night. So I mean, you have to be growing the brand, and I think this conversation, no matter what the outcome is growing the brand a little bit.
I agree with you. My initial reaction was that I didn't see why Murray State would want to move from a one-bid league like the OVC to another one-bid league like the Missouri Valley, but I was wrong. I, for some reason, see the Missouri Valley or saw it as a one-bid league, and it did only get one bid this year. But in 2012, 2013, 2015, and 2016, they got 2 teams in. In 2006, they got 4 teams in. So, yes, there have been a number of years when they were a one-bid league, but there have also been a number of years when they got more than one team. The OVC has only gotten 2 teams in once, and that was something like 35 years ago.
Right, and neither one was Murray State.
And after the 2014-15 season, when a lot of people, including every Racer fan I know, thought Murray State should have gotten an at-large bid, the Racers brought in somebody from the NCAA. They talked to him and asked, what do we need to do with our scheduling to get to the point where we could get an at-large bid?
Right.
And the NCAA official said, there's nothing you can do. You're in a one-bid league. End of story.
Yeah, I mean, even you have to look at what is up against Murray State when it comes to scheduling. You've got how many out-of-conference games a year?
Well, they play 16 conference games, so 14 out-of-conference games.
14 out-of-conference games, and you need a certain number of home games to make money to stay neutral.
Right.
Which means that you've got to pay low dollar and have home games, which forces you to take teams like Alabama State or Alabama A&M, the SWAC teams, or a D2 school or an NAIA school. Now, nobody likes those. The coaches, I don't think, particularly like them, but that's the financial reality of it. So now you're down to 12 games that you've got to play with. You've got to have 12 games that you've got to perform well enough in those 12 games to offset 16 games in your conference. Wouldn't be difficult if your conference were just, all 150 teams. RPI 150 or Sagarin 150, whatever your measurement is. If they're all 150s, okay. You win all of the games in your conference, and you're not bad. You're okay. And then the games in your out-of-conference can be bonus to you.
But it's not like that.
It's not like that.
No, the OVC is a low major league.
Absolutely.
It's one of the weakest leagues in college basketball. And
multiple teams every year, plus 300 in the RPI. I don't care what you do in the out-of-conference, you're not going to counteract multiple teams at plus 300.
Plus, the problem then in scheduling out-of-conference games is that real mid-majors don't want to play you because of the conference that you're in. The only way that real mid-majors will play you, and by real mid-majors I mean teams from the true mid-major leagues.
Right.
The only way they will play you is if every game is at their place.
Right.
And
or if you're willing to shell out a large amount of money to create a home and home. Think Wright State, which is not what I would call a high mid-major team. But when Dayton came here, we had to go 2-for-1 to Dayton.
Right.
That's an Atlantic 10 team. That's not an SEC team. That's Atlantic 10. You just have to do that.
Yes. So if you were in a league like the Missouri Valley, which is the 12th ranked league in the NCAA, then you can get home and homes with some of those schools.
Well, and to me, there's a couple things going on here. Okay, so if Murray State is approached and if they wish to leave, there's an exit fee from the Ohio Valley Conference. With no notice, it's $1 million. Now that number sounds huge. Totally does. And it's a big number. It should be daunting, and it is. But you've got something going on in your favor. The NCAA made a one-time payment of around $700,000 to Murray State to invest, to do with whatever they want. I mean, it's Murray State's money. The NCAA made a distribution to Murray State. So those are your pros and cons that you've got in your hands. But there's a lot of questions on this that I can't answer, that really the only people who can are Alan Ward and Bob Davies.
Well, now that's true. But
so,
you've got to think that Murray State is doing everything they can to get into the Missouri Valley at this point, because they have not come out and said, we're happy where we are.
Right.
Belmont, another team that there have been rumors about, Belmont came out and said, hey, we're happy to be in the OVC. We're proud to be a member of the Ohio Valley Conference, which leads you to believe that they probably aren't going to go to the Missouri Valley. Murray State hasn't said that, and you would think that if they didn't want to get into the Missouri Valley, that they would have made that kind of statement. From
a negotiating standpoint, I think even if you aren't going to choose to go, which I've not seen anything that says that Murray State administration would say no if the Missouri Valley Conference called. But even if you decided that you weren't going to go, if you knew the numbers were never going to add up, it only hurts your negotiating with the OVC and your standing with the OVC if you don't at least listen to somebody else. The biggest issue that we've got right now is that the OVC doesn't seem to have a vision. I mean, they keep doing the same thing they have been doing for years, and it's not positive.
Now, one question is, could Murray State compete in the Missouri Valley Conference? And I really, before checking some numbers, I really wasn't sure. But I took a look at the Sagarin ratings. And if you look at it, and we'll just take a look at the teams that went to the NCAA tournament, the racer teams that went to the NCAA tournament, and the 2014-15 team, which everybody thought should have gone to the NCAA tournament. The 2014-15 team would have been third in the Missouri Valley, behind Wichita State and Northern Iowa. Of course, Wichita State is gone, so that would put them second among teams that remain in the Missouri Valley Conference. The 2011-12 team, the team that was the last undefeated team in the nation that year, would have been third in the Missouri Valley behind Wichita State and Creighton. Both of those teams are gone. Then the 2009-10 team would have been second behind Northern Iowa. The 2005-16, which won the OVC, went to the NCAA tournament, and nearly beat North Carolina, would have been seventh in the Missouri Valley Conference. The 03-04 team would have been second behind Southern Illinois, and the 2001-2 team would have been fifth in the Missouri Valley Conference, behind Southern Illinois, Creighton, Illinois State, and Southwest Missouri State. So Murray State's best teams, I think, clearly can compete with the teams at the top of the Missouri Valley Conference.
I think that's absolutely right. And I don't normally like looking at computer rankings and trying to infer a one-for-one, but what I think you're saying here is that good Murray State teams are on par with good Missouri Valley Conference teams.
Yes.
And I think that's absolutely the case. I think, honestly, you might even see those numbers go up inside the computer modeling if Murray State plays tougher teams in their conference.
That's true.
So you've got that. I think I looked in the past, since 2000, Murray State's played like 21 or 22 games against the Missouri Valley Conference, and they're about 500. Now,
another thing that you were talking about when we discussed this a little bit before the show was that not only would it give Murray State a chance to get an at-large bid, but it would also improve their standing in the NIT should they have a chance to get in that tournament.
I mean,
talk a little bit about that.
So one of the things you look at we all want to go to the NCAA tournament, but there's only limited spots. It doesn't matter who you are. I mean, Northwestern had wanted to go to the NCAA tournament their entire lifetime as a program and just now got in there. So everybody kind of deals with it in their own way. But if we look at what happened Cameron Payne's sophomore year, the year of the buzzer beater against Belmont, that Murray State team had won 25 games in a row. They were in the top 25, and they were snubbed from the NCAA tournament. And honestly, there was a lot of consternation out there that I have to agree with. I mean, Jeff Bidwell got angry and wondered aloud on his radio show what the league office was doing, because it didn't seem like they fought for Murray State. And I think that was the last straw for a lot of Murray State fans. It's one thing to keep the league playing in a really poor place in the Municipal Auditorium in Nashville. It's another thing to pay bottom dollar and get the dregs of OVC officiating. You know what I mean? The NCAA officiating, we're taking the bottom of the barrel. We don't pay anything. We really do. There are some good ones that come through. There really are. But then there are some with no experience or people who have no chance of getting a job in a larger conference that we get at Murray State and in the OVC.
Well, the Racers were a 4 seed in the NIT that year.
Right.
This past year, the second-place team in the Missouri Valley that did not get into the NCAA tournament, they were a 1 seed
right.
in the NIT. And let me tell you something. It might not be exciting to be in the first round of the NIT or the second round. You get to Madison Square Garden, our fans would be excited about that. And you've got a better chance as a 1 seed than you do as a 4.
Right, by its very nature. I actually got to travel with the team a little bit, that NIT run that they took. They played at was it Missouri State in the first round? No, that was when Billy Kennedy was here. I don't remember who they played in the first round. They hosted, I know that much. They played UTEP, and then moved on. They made it to Old Dominion. They beat Tulsa. It was UTEP, Tulsa, then Old Dominion. I actually watched all 3 of those games live. And the UTEP game, the Murray State fans were out in full force. Murray State played really well against Mike Floyd's UTEP team. The UTEP team that was pretty good, Murray State just wiped the floor with them. There was a 4-5, I believe, in the NIT. The next game they had to go to Tulsa. Now, that's where a 4 versus a 1 really shows itself. Not only do you play a pretty good team in UTEP in the first round, now you've got to go to Tulsa, which historically has been a very, very difficult place to play. Now, Murray State came out and shot the lights out and sent a pretty raucous Tulsa crowd, sent them home sad. So the next game they have to go on the road again. So, and we're not talking about an easy road trip. It's not like they went back to Murray and then went on. They went from Tulsa to Norfolk, Virginia to play Old Dominion. That is a tough road trip. I don't care how you're going. I mean, that's really difficult. And if you're a 1 seed, you're at home. You're in your own bed. You don't do any traveling. You practice. You know what I mean? You just go through your normal week. And that's the difference. And you look at that and you say, okay, well, what does that value bring? Well, that means that you have a better chance of making it to New York for the semifinals of the NIT. That's how you build a buzz around your program, is to be a team that people thought, well, maybe they should have been in the NCAA tournament, and then you go and win the NIT, and everybody looks at you and goes, yeah, that team should have been in the NIT. They should have been in the NCAA tournament, not the NIT.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden, when it comes to the next year, if you're good, people look at it and say, well, they got snubbed last year and won the NIT. This is not a team that you should really snub. And that's positive in building that brand name.
So I think we both agree that if they can get in,
yeah,
Murray State should accept an invitation to the Missouri Valley Conference.
I agree.
The question then is, will a bid from the Missouri Valley Conference, will an invitation be forthcoming? I think if they take 2 teams, then there's a chance that it will be. You have to question whether they're going to take 2 teams.
Yep.
Because they're at 9 after losing Wichita State. If they take 1, they get to 10. That's a round number. Most leagues like having 10. There is talk that they would take 2 and play 20 conference games.
Right.
And that way they would have only 10 non-conference games that
right.
they would have to schedule.
Which in the OVC would be terrible, because you're adding 2 games against teams with an RPI of around 300.
Right.
In the Missouri Valley, the chances are better. That's a better thing to have.
Now, if they take just one, I think it's going to be Valpo.
Which, honestly, doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Okay, why?
Well, I was looking at this. So of the teams, Harry Schroeder actually covers both the Ohio Valley Conference and the Missouri Valley Conference for Valley Insider, and he listed the teams that he had heard that the Missouri Valley Conference were looking at. Of course, we've got Murray State and Belmont, Valparaiso. He adds UMKC and schools from the Dakotas.
Okay.
That's his entire list that he's got. So I started looking at these teams, right? Let's look at their attendance over the last 5 years. Now, when you take the last 5 years, you get a much better sample size of what's actually
right.
there. Okay, so Belmont averaged 2,397 fans per home game over the past 5 years.
That's terrible.
That's really not good. That tells me that they're not getting support from their big market.
Yeah, and
it's Loyola and Chicago all over again.
For a team in a city the size of Nashville, it's terrible.
With the success that they've had,
right.
This has been
Absolutely.
a very positive Belmont 5 years, and they're still at 2,300 people. Next, Valparaiso, 3,205 people per home game.
Okay.
Not great. We're not even going to talk about facilities at this point, but not great. South Dakota State. Now, South Dakota State has had a really good run the past 5 years. Really good run. A couple of NBA-type players, pretty positive. They're averaging 3,076 fans per game.
Okay.
Murray State, which has been, the last 5 years have been a high beta, a high change. I mean, we've had some of the best years we've ever had and some of the worst. So it's going to be margin in there. 4,583 is the average home game.
Right. If that's what you're looking at, then clearly Murray State's the choice.
Right.
On the other hand, if you look at average victories per season, the edge goes to Valpo.
Right, and that's the big thing. So it makes you wonder who has the highest rank for that. The next thing I looked at was this is actually posted on the Missouri Valley Conference fans discussion board, and I checked it. It works out. The Sagarins for the past 18 years, average. Okay, you've got of the remaining Missouri Valley teams and some of the ones that they're looking at. Okay, Northern Iowa's 86. No big surprise there. They've been a very good program for the past 18 years. SIU at 91. Now that's a team that has had high highs and low lows the past 18 years.
These are where they rank. It's their rank.
Their rank in the sense, yeah. Missouri State's 96.
Okay.
Not terrible. Illinois State's 103. Murray State 109. Over the past 18 years, that's pretty good. Valpo is 112.
Okay.
Belmont's 119. The highest of the Dakotas is North Dakota State at 138. Then you get into the bottom half of the Missouri Valley Conference. So these are all four of those teams that I mentioned are bracketed by current members of the Missouri Valley Conference. Indiana State's 141, Bradley's 143, Evansville's 152, Drake's 161, and Loyola's 175.
Now, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think that the dip in Murray State's fortunes over the last 2 years helps or hurts the Racers' case?
You know, I would hope that it doesn't even factor. All programs will have spells where they go and kind of level off. I don't think it helps. Let me put it that way.
I can make an argument that it helps.
Really?
Yes.
Let me hear it. I want to hear this.
If you're Northern Iowa
mm-hmm.
and they're considering bringing in a team that the last 2 years has won 30 games each season, been ranked in the top 25.
Right.
You might not like the idea of bringing that team in because you might fear that they might come in and win the league right away, and there might be other schools in the league that would feel that way. With Murray State being where they are, they can see Murray State as a solid program that's bound to make it back to where they used to be, but not a program that they need to be afraid is going to come in and win the league in their first year.
I can appreciate that. And I think there's going to be some of that comes to play. I think that, you want that balance. You want somebody who's going to come in and be additive. Let me be really clear on this. no one team on this list is going to be the silver bullet that replaces Wichita State.
That's true. But let's be clear about one other thing. 12 years ago, Wichita State wasn't Wichita State.
Right. Exactly.
So the fact that they reached the point that they got to where they could
Right.
leave the Missouri Valley doesn't preclude that there's another school in the league that could do exactly the same
Right.
thing.
And you've got to think Northern Iowa is the team that wants to make that big leap upward. No matter where they go or what they do, they're aspirational. They want to have a solid league, but they want to be the next Creighton. They want to be the next Wichita State. They want to be the next
Right.
team that goes and makes huge money in another conference. And I don't think that's crazy. I think every team wants that for their
Right.
school. But you look at it, if it's basketball and if it's fan support, there's not a whole lot of question that Murray State leads those two.
Right.
Especially when you take over the long haul as opposed to the last couple of years.
Right.
That's not to take anything away from Belmont or Valparaiso. Both of those are fantastic schools, but you have to question. I mean, when you look at Murray State, what's the one thing nationally that you could say that Murray State does as well as any program in the country? My guess would be they put out coaches.
That's true.
They put out coaches, and it's like they don't miss.
Another consideration that they might make
Mm-hmm.
is the state school versus private school mix
Absolutely.
that they have in that league.
Yeah, and Valparaiso, of course, is private. Belmont's private. Murray State's public. We all know that.
Wichita State was a state school, clearly.
Right.
So if they want to keep the balance the same and they only bring in one school, Murray State ought to be the option.
Right. And you know, honestly, from a basketball standpoint, I don't think you can argue that Murray State's had a good program over the past 20 years.
You don't think you could dispute that?
Dispute that. I'm sorry. I don't think you can dispute that. The big thing that you look at with those teams, and these are way down the list on selections, in my opinion. You look at what Belmont and what Valparaiso have done recently. Valparaiso has been defined by the Drew family.
True.
Homer Drew, and then recently Bryce Drew. They've been the coaching family that has led Valparaiso upward on the national scene. The shot against Mississippi in the NCAA tournament is one they show every year. And as such, you have to ask yourself the question, well, they've never really done what Murray State does. One of the things you can look at in the Missouri Valley Conference, if you're a good Missouri Valley Conference coach, you get another job somewhere. Bruce Weber did it. Bill Self did it. I mean, it's just how that works. So how you handle coaching changes helps determine your long-term arc. Murray State has done phenomenally well at that. As good as any team in the country at their level at hiring coaches and maintaining success. Valparaiso's never had to do it. And they're doing it now. They just lost their coach. Are they going to be the same team they were last year? Are they going to be able to do what they've done in the past? The answer is I don't know. And I think you could ask the same question of Belmont. Belmont has only had one coach their entire time in Division I, and that's Rick Byrd. Rick Byrd's not going to coach forever. What does Belmont do with the next coach? And the answer is, I don't know. Rick Byrd's a Hall of Famer. They got a Hall of Fame coach on the bench, and they don't win games in the NCAA tournament, and they don't draw a lot of people, and there's no real reason for it except that there's apathy in Nashville for Belmont. That's just how it is. But you can look at Murray State. They win games. They change coaches. They win games. Fan support is high. Engagement is high. Market size is not. So if you're using the Loyola, the metrics they use to invite Loyola Chicago into the Missouri Valley Conference, Murray State's not going to get a sniff.
Right.
Because in that one they said, well, your basketball history is not all that important. Your fan support is not all that important. Your facilities, not important. Your market size, now that's important. they went and picked up Loyola. In that case, you look at either University of Illinois Chicago, the Flames, or you go to UMKC and look at the Kangaroos. Those two teams, you can say facilities aren't important, winning isn't important, market's important. If, however, you change that and say, okay, we need a team that can be competitive in the league, can bring fans, plays the type of basketball that we want to have, then you look at some other teams. You look at Valparaiso, you look at Belmont, you look at Murray State, and on that one, Murray State's actually in the lead.
And finally, let's look at geography. And initially I thought, I don't know that it makes sense for Murray State, but it's not as bad as I had thought before looking at who was in the league. They have 2 teams in Indiana. Yep. They have 4 teams in Illinois, and then they have 2 teams in Missouri.
Right.
So, and then, they've got 2 in Iowa.
Yep.
So the Iowa schools are the only ones that are really that far away.
And even then, they're still within bus distance.
Would be a long, painful bus ride.
It's about 8 hours, which is they don't like going much over 8 hours on a bus. And frankly, I do not blame them.
But you can go 6 hours to Chicago. It's
Absolutely.
not that big.
No,
it's not that big of a deal.
It's not even a difficult drive. I mean, It's straight shot. You just go straight through Illinois and you end up in Chicago.
Now, it's boring.
It is. They have movies on the bus.
And then there's that.
So, there's a positive there. And yes, you can look at the 2 longest road trips in the OVC are 5 hours, 5.5 hours, to Morehead State, to Jacksonville State. And both of those, because of divisions, you at most will only have to make once a year.
Right.
And some years you won't ever have to make it at all. So to me, the big thing is, there's so many questions on this. Does Missouri Valley select more than one team? Because that increases the odds that Murray State gets selected.
Agreed.
If they do, how many more teams? Do they go to 10? Do they go to 11? Do they go to 12? Now, 10, the chances are pretty slim. 11, the chances of selecting Murray State go up, but you're right. It's an offset schedule. It's kind of strange. How do you make that happen? If you go to 12, do you split into divisions?
Right.
If you split into geographic divisions, then the travel cost for whoever you bring in, the difference between what they had and what they have is much smaller, just by its very nature. You know what I mean? There's a shot that it's still an increase in travel for Murray State.
Well, clearly it would depend on how they did the division.
Absolutely.
For Murray State's benefit, we would hope it would be north-south. If it's east-west, then we get stuck with the Iowa schools, and that's not good.
And depending on how you slice it, because I was looking at it from like a believe it or not, a northwest-southeast split.
Okay.
Which kind of works that way.
You can do that.
Yeah. And it would put, if they took 3, and it was the 3 top contenders on my list, it'd be Belmont, Illinois State, Indiana State, Evansville, SIU, and Murray State in one division.
And that would be good.
That right there is a great division of basketball. There's talent. It's not far. They're easy road trips to make. They're all bus-worthy, no problem, right? And actually, believe it or not, all those teams would save money on their travel. And that puts games like Northern Iowa, Drake, Valparaiso. Those are different. Those are games. Those are the longest ones you'd have to go if you played those games on the road. The closer ones would be Bradley, Loyola, and Missouri State. Those are all easy bus trips with none over like 6 hours to Chicago. We talk about travel, and we talk about travel because it's important, because it affects all of the sports that we bring to that conference. But honestly, it's not insane. You're not having to fly to the West Coast. That's the biggest issue here, is that you're maintaining costs to some extent. So the question I've got, and it comes down to this really, from Murray State's perspective, does the Missouri Valley Conference membership pay more than the Ohio Valley Conference? That's the first question you got to ask. And the answer should be yes.
Well, it is. I've seen the NCAA disbursement differences.
There you go. So,
and they get like 2.5 times what the OVC gets.
So you have to think that if that were to trickle down, Murray State would get 2.5 times their share of what they had in the OVC.
Right.
So that's good. The second question is, could you charge more for pay games? You have to think that teams would pay more for a Missouri Valley Conference game against the Missouri Valley Conference team than they would against the OVC.
Right.
So there's another revenue area. Do you have the ability to add a pay game or two for the next couple of years?
But here's the thing, though, about the Missouri Valley Conference.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they've changed the rule, they don't do pay games.
Understandable. There are ways around that because the Ohio Valley Conference had that same rule, and teams skirted it by playing 4-for-1s and the one being a neutral site. Austin Peay did that where they played Tennessee 4 times in Knoxville and then played once in Nashville at Bridgestone, and it worked out great for Tennessee because that's where the SEC tournament was that year. So there are ways around doing that, and I think you can make that happen if you wish it to happen. So there are revenue pockets available that Murray State could use to help pay off any of the exit fee or an increase in travel costs. These are all real and they're tangible, and you can make these things happen.
Well, hopefully we'll find out the answer here in the next few days.
Lots of busy stuff going on. Oh my gosh, you know what I want? I don't even want a definitive answer on anything other than, is the Missouri Valley Conference going to expand? If I got that answer, I'd be good for a while. Because if the answer is no, if they're going to stay pat at 9, we can wait on all the rest of the stuff.
And that brings to a close this episode of the Improbability Engine.